The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Monday, August 7th, 2017. Thanks so much for joining us. Oh, yeah, this is a serious close-up time. My producer has you seriously zoomed in on my face, so let me back the hell up a little bit here. So I'm doing a little, we're here. It doesn't matter how we're here, but we are here and we're live. We're taking your calls, 857-600-0518. I definitely want to get you to chime in on a couple of conversations that we're having tonight. Number one, we're going to talk about this article from the economist.com, which tells us what we already know. But I thought it was fascinating that they use one particular nation. They use Scandinavia to show the level of income inequality that is the result of tax evasion. So I want to discuss that article. I also want to discuss the ongoing, not the fight that you think. I'm not going to talk about the fight that most people think I'm going to talk about. I'm not talking about that. That's done. Unless you call in and ask about that. I'm not talking about the interfighting of the progressive left and the what I call the alt left. I'm not talking about that tonight. I do want to talk about the fight that I have been noticing has come back in full swing, and that is the Bernie Sanders wing of the party versus the Hillary Clinton wing of the party. The proxy wars. It's no longer Hillary versus Bernie. It's Bernie or anyone who doesn't like Hillary versus, I don't know what that versus Kamala Harris. So that's the proxy war. But more importantly than that, I want to talk about a tweet storm that I wanted to start on Saturday morning, but I got too busy cooking shrimp and grits for my host. And I want to talk about it in the sense of why progressives aren't winning. I don't want to say it negatively and say why they can't win. Sometimes I feel like that's why they can't win, but it's also I'm going to try to say it in the most positive way I can and try to help us understand the mistakes that we're still making as progressives in this competition against the neoliberal center. And it's important that we talk about that because I see some unforced errors happening. I see some unforced errors, some mistakes that are being made over and over and over again that we in the Progressive Army have been shouting at the top of our lungs, trying to get people to realize that, man, like we can't make the same mistakes over and over and over again as progressives. So I definitely want to talk about that. You can weigh in on the discussion, 857-600-0518. We're checking out your comments on Facebook. We're checking out your comments on Twitter and your comments in the YouTube chat. All right. A couple of people in the YouTube chat are ready. Let's get down to business. So the article that I think is pretty obvious, and it states what we already know. The Economist did a report on 3 economists who did a study of tax evasion in Scandinavia, and it shows that tax evasion is concentrated exactly as you would expect. The people who had a moderate income, less than $2 million a year, they paid about 3% less in taxes than they were supposed to. So if we're going to call that tax evasion, that means people like you and me, average Joes, they paid 3% less than they're supposed to. So there is tax evasion in our bracket, but it's 3% of their wealth was untaxed. And people who made around $2 million a year, that second tier, I believe the percentage was 10% evasion. And then when you get to the wealthiest of the wealthy, people who made like $42 million a year, or the top 1% of 1% in income earners, they concentrated 30% tax evasion in that top bracket. 30% of their wealth was not taxed at all. And so to me, it's sort of obvious that this happens. And I think to everyone listening, it perfectly mirrors the income inequality that we see, that we were always talking about. But this has a uniquely detrimental, deleterious effect on, somebody said in the chat room, is that all? That's a lot. Like 30% of your taxes annually not being paid. That's a huge gap. And this is the result of people having money overseas, offshore banking, having money in Swiss bank accounts. And based on their data, Scandinavian accounts that are outsourced or are overseas or in Swiss bank accounts represents about 2% of the overall wealth in Scandinavia. On average, worldwide, 4%. 4% of income or of people, wealthy people, share or store their wealth overseas in an offshore bank. That simply means is that 30% we see represented in Scandinavia is actually a conservative look at what we would expect globally. So globally, you're guaranteed 30% or higher in terms of how much the wealthiest of the wealthy skip out on their taxes. Now, this is not breaking news, right? This is stuff that we know, but we usually know this with regard to the wealth disparity. We usually know this with regard to how much wealth is concentrated at the top, how much income, annual income is concentrated at the top. But we rarely talk about it in terms of how much the top 1%, the top 0.1%, 0.01% actually evade taxes. And by them evading taxes, they are quite literally abdicating their responsibility to any responsibility to the society from which they derive all of their wealth. And what I mean by that is they have no responsibility. Our responsibility to this society is the amount that we pay in taxes into the society, or the amount that we contribute to society. For people who may not pay income taxes, right? You may not make enough to pay income taxes, right? But your entire life's labor, right? We're talking about 50 hours, 60 hours a week. That's being contributed to the society. Not only that, the money you make off that labor, you don't keep that money. You don't save that money for yourself. You don't pass it down to another generation. People on our income bracket, we spend that money. So they get our entire life's labor, and then they get our entire income, all of our capital, right? Our revenue, our income every month, every year, that's our capital that we have to work for. We have to use our labor. So they get our entire life's labor, they get all of our capital, and they get our taxes, whether it be state, local, sales tax, property tax, or if you happen to pay income tax like I do, but you don't make enough to store money overseas or have a Swiss bank account. So it's really a crunch on our bracket to make this society work, because we give it everything. We give it our life, we give it our money, we give it our taxes, we give it our labor, we give it everything. And when we die, we don't have anything. We don't have anything to leave to the next generation. That's because we gave everything that we had to this system. And we have people who share society with us that take 100, 1,000, 10,000 times as much wealth from this same system as you and I. They take this level of wealth from the same system as you and I, but they don't contribute based on what society says they should contribute. They're shirking their responsibility. Here's the best example I can give you. People living in an apartment together, a husband and a wife. Let's say a husband and a wife. And the wife, she is cooking. She is going to work at a full-time job. She's pouring all her money into the house, right, to the living expenses. When her check comes in, everything gets paid, right? She doesn't have anything at the end of the month. All she got is you, right? That's all she got. She's got you, and that's it. But she pour her money, she pour her labor, she pour her love, she pour her life into that, and she makes $10,000 a year. Let's keep the numbers easy, right? So she's putting everything that she has, from her $10,000 a year to her labor, to her time, to her everything. And she's pouring that into that household. And here you come making your $100,000 a year, and you don't contribute to rent. You don't contribute to groceries. You don't contribute to the work around the house. All you do is take your $100,000 a year that you're freed up. You can't do this without your spouse, right? In this scenario, you guys are in this society together. There is nothing in that house that works without your wife working it, or your girl, or whatever, right? But you're freed up with your $100,000 to go on vacation. Do you see how the imbalance is? You're both living in the same house. You're both contributing, but she's contributing everything that she has, and you got the other person in the relationship only contributes their presence. You're lucky to have me here. You're lucky for me to be in your house. That's exactly what the top 1% is doing to America. They are sitting in the same house that we are building. Our labor is building. Our time is building. Our effort is building. Hell, our money is building. We give them 50 hours a day. 50 hours a week, and we give them 50 years of our life. We give them all of our income. We give them all of our taxes. We give them all of our consumption. This system does not work without labor in the working class. And yet you have other people who are benefiting from this household and not contributing to this household. It's as simple as that. We're in an abusive relationship with the top 1%. And they are literally going on vacation with the money that we helped them make, that this society collectively helped them make. There is not a billionaire without the society on which they stood, on the backs on which they stood. Elizabeth Warren did that whole tirade. There's no multi-billion-dollar company without the society that was around it, without the people to work at it, without the people to buy their stuff, without the roads for them to drive on. And yet they are shirking their responsibility to pay into this society based on what society says they should pay. Yeah, Ben, but it was their money to begin with. Sure, it's their money to begin with. I'll give you that. But they don't make that money without the people who are going to buy their stuff. Do you know how powerful? I think that's part of the problem. We don't realize how powerful we are as consumers, that we can destroy Facebook. We can destroy YouTube. We can destroy Google. We can take down Walmart. We don't understand, because divide and conquer, right? Everybody says this. We know the power, but we can never implement the power because we're so divided. But the point is still this. There is no Walmart without our consumption. Hell, there's no Walmart without our labor. There's no Walmart without our taxes being paid into the system so that their employees can get welfare. There's no, and yet Walmart wants to go around, gallivant and find around the globe to find the cheapest taxes that they could possibly pay. And then they shirk their responsibility and just evade taxes by storing their money overseas. And that's on the corporate level, same as that thing is happening on the person level. So we have leeches in society. Somebody's tuning in for the first time. Oh my God, I didn't know Ben was a socialist. We've been a little busy talking about some other stuff for a minute, but let's keep our eye on the ball here, right? The eye on the ball is that we have to have a more egalitarian society, man, that the people who are listen, you must, in my opinion, you should pay a progressive tax system says this: you pay into or more than what you extract from a society. Everybody try to get this, language and say, oh, well, we pay the top marginal percentage. I say, okay, yeah. What did you take from society? Look at it this way. What did Bill Gates take? Bill Gates took his billions out of this society. Take the society, take our collective government, take our collective people, we the people. Without that, there is no Microsoft. I don't care how brilliant of an idea it is. He cannot be a billionaire without the millions of people who buy and consume his stuff, or the city that provide the education for all the children that grew up to work at Microsoft. And so all this that says, oh, well, they're paying a top marginal tax rate and it's the competition and all that, that's great. I got you. I feel you. We want to be competitive, whatever. But the reality of it is that they are extracting billions of dollars in wealth out of our society. And by them shirking their responsibility to pay taxes, they are abdicating their responsibility to pour back into the society from which they derive their wealth. tax the hell out of them. And the problem is we got to close all the loopholes that allow them to take their money and put it overseas and hide it. Yeah, Ben, but it's their money. Yes, I get it. It's their money. Yes. Do they make their money without society? So they have a debt to society. Let's just call it that. Your taxes, that's your debt to society. Do we have a screwed up government that we could probably make it more efficient than all? Efficient and schmiscient. I don't know. I don't even know how to make that one up. I don't really. We could talk about that at a later date. That's often used as a red herring to keep us from ever talking about the fact that we have people who take out of the society. They call us freeloaders, right? They call people who they call a person on welfare a freeloader. Let's think about that. All right. They may take $500 a month out of the system for food. Maybe they're on Section 8, so they get about, let's say, $1,000 worth of rent a month. So right now they're taking out of the system $1,500 a month. What are they putting back in the system? Every penny, every cent that they took out is going right back into the system. Right? Every dime for living goes right back in the system. Every dime for food stamp goes right back into living. If they happen to have a job, every dime of that is gone because they're going to buy something nice. I don't know. However they make it. But they take the Section 8, they take welfare, and every dime goes back into the system. We can argue whether or not you want them to give more to the system. That's fine. But they're giving and they're putting back 100% of what. If you show me a person on welfare that has a savings account, and then maybe we'll talk about why we need to tax that savings account. We'll talk about it. I'm not agreeing to it, but we'll talk about it. And we can basically, argue on the merits. But people in the working class, middle class, lower middle class, every dime that we make goes back into this society and drives this entire machine. There is no machine without our blood, sweat, money, tears, taxes that comes out of us. And what is the level? What is our level of contribution back? What is your level of contribution back into society? Think about that. What do you have left at the end of the month? That money doesn't just disappear into the ether. That's your every penny. That when your balance at the end of the month is zero, like most people, that means you've given 100%. And most of us are actually giving more than that. Most of us are giving 125% because we're living on debt and credit. So we are contributing 100% of everything that we have, our labor, our capital, our taxes going to this system. Now ask yourself, how much are the rest of these people contributing to the system? How much do they have left over at the end of the month? So anyway, I read that article this morning and all that came to mind. I'm like, we really have to get back to some of the fundamentals of a more egalitarian society. I've said a lot here and I'm not undermining what I said. I'm not saying that these people don't contribute anything. I'm saying they're not contributing their fair share. Same thing Bernie Sanders has been saying forever. They're not contributing their fair share. Based on, it doesn't matter to me what an arbitrary tax code says. The tax code, it will always change. I'm saying, are you contributing? What are you contributing based on what you're taking out? That's how we should measure this thing. That's how we should do our tax code. What are you paying back into society based on what you've taken out of society? I mean, you literally are taking billions of dollars out of society. Now, what are you putting back into it? At what percentage? That's all. That's all. You very well could be at 35%. Cool. You know what the average human being on the planet Earth gives back to the society? 150%, 125%. Whatever is the proper representation of our level of debt, because we don't have anything left at the end of the month. We don't have any time left, and we don't have any capital left because we paid all of our capital for rent and food. So you and me and the rest of us, we are giving 100% of everything we have into the society. And you have some people who are walking away and they're giving 2%. And they are the ones who are the millionaires and the billionaires. 857-600-0518 if you want to weigh in on the conversation. Let's take this first caller. Caller, you're live on the air. You're going to cut down the whatever you're listening to us on. Cut that down, 917, and tell us your name, comment, and or question. 857. You're still listening to me on the radio. You should be listening to me over the phone. What's your name, comment, and or question? All right, I'm going to have to hang up on you. We'll catch you next go round. 857-600-0518. Let's read some comments in the comment section here to see what you guys are saying. Billionaires, Q got no rings. Billionaires do not work harder than everybody else. Most of them are born into that wealth. Right. I mean, if we literally look at the physical contribution, here's the thing that people don't say about wealthy people and corporations. I've worked for several corporations that went through several rounds of funding, getting capitalized before they went public. And you know what they told me? You know what their story is? But by the time they got their first round of funding, which is in the millions of dollars of capital that somebody is pouring into their company, that first round of funding, they still didn't know what their idea was about. I mean, you just got several $1 million in funding, and you don't know what your business is about. I've worked, how many of you work for people who simply have capital and don't have a goddamn idea of how to run a goddamn business? But they got the money. So we're talking about people who simply seize the means of production. But we're talking about people who have, all they have is money, and they can command our labor because they have money, but they don't have the talent, the skill, the wherewithal, the knowledge, anything to do what they have to do. So you know, what are we saying? That yes, this is how we've done it, and this is what the article pointed out in The Economist. We have structured a society that puts value on capital at the detriment of labor. Once you do that, you put a society that puts preference on capital at the expense of labor. Then you're really, sincerely talking about a society that just disregards. I'm trying not to use profanity here, but basically just shits on labor. That's where we are. All right. Let me make sure everyone can hear me. I'm thinking maybe an issue with my phones, but we're going to keep it going. 857-600-0518. Testing 1 2. Nah, they should hear me good. It looks good on my end. All right. Maybe they're just not patient enough. All right. We'll give this caller a try. Caller 510. Can you hear me? Hello, caller. You're live on the air.
Hello?
Yep, that's you. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hi, this is Vita from San Leandro. How you doing, Big?
Hey, Vita, long time no here. How's it going?
Okay, I would like to say that when we talk about labor and capitalism in terms of the individuals, we can go way back to this from the beginning of the country when we talk about labor and the difference of who is considered labor and the amount of money that someone is paid in society.
Yep.
And we need to go back and start there in the conversation and look at the historical content, because within that today, the history and the bills that we have on the books now, when you start looking back into those areas and look at how they are effective today in society and how it's based on, they say don't look at the racial part of it in terms of groups, but the data is presented in that way and the bills are presented in that way when you dig down into it, and who gets to write those bills, because also the politicians that we elect, they also have those that they choose to hire to write the bills, or the think tanks, whoever their interest is that presents those types of bills in the legal part of how the bills are written, because most politicians don't write the bills. They have a group of people that writes it. And then when you look at it, they don't really dig down and see the effects, how it crosses over to different areas of the law.
Well, Vita, I definitely want to jump in there because you brought up something that's a big can of worms that you're absolutely right. If we're going to talk about the effects of labor and what capital effects have on labor, we have to talk about it in terms of the original labor here in the United States, the free labor, slavery, right? This is, it's always it's always a constant, persistent hunt for cheap and free labor. That's what it is. That's what capitalism needs. It's a persistent hunt across the globe. And this is what all globalization really was about expanding our borders so that we can get the cheapest labor. It's as close to slave labor as we could get during the Civil War, before the Civil War. That's what it always has. That's why, capitalism is not a moral system. It is an amoral system. As an amoral system, it is a system that people can wield to do as they please. And listen, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about all the other issues underlying this entire conversation. There's the long range. There's a big, broad range of solutions from someone like me who's on more of the democratic socialist leaning. Like I said, I've got friends who look at me and say, Ben, you ain't about that revolution. And I'm like, yeah, I probably ain't about, killing a whole bunch of people with violent overthrow. Right. So you got the whole range of solutions. But the very, very basic first step solution that should not even be up for debate are some key things. Tax the wealthy, and we make sure that we have a structured society that gives back to the people who are giving the society life. I mean, it's simple. We may not get the whole revolution that some of my comrades want, right? But hell, if we can't get a living wage, hell, if we can't get a single payer, hell, if we can't get a universal basic income. I mean, hell, Alaska got universal basic income. Caller, you're live on the air. 917. What's your name, comment, and/or question?
Yeah, my name is Jim, and I want to say one thing. The 8 families who control Walmart right now own almost half the wealth of this nation. Mm-hmm. So what's their responsibility to paying taxes when they own almost 40% of the wealth of? They own the wealth of almost 40% of people that live out there.
Yep.
When one person wants to move out of New Jersey and it almost collapsed the state budget, at what point is there too much money at the top and not enough at the bottom?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay. It's economic viscosity. If we're not able to keep the money going around and it gets plugged up on the top, then we're going to have to cut services for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And this is not something, and this is like obsessive compulsive disorder, because why do you need so much money?
More money they could even spend in a lifetime. You know how many people,
more money than anybody can.
I have one friend that's legit probably in the top 3%. And he really is like, it gets to the point where you just, you get bored with spending money. I'm like, bruh, can I borrow $1,000? You know what I mean? Like, but you're right. It gets up there and it does not circulate. That's the thing about the working class and middle class. Go ahead, finish your thought.
It's about $80,000. It's about $80,000 a year. Most people who can make about $80,000 to $100,000 a year are at the level of happiness that they would want to be. And making any more will not really change that. It's just about you being able to take care of yourself, get a little something extra when you want to, and that's the little pleasures of life. When you get to the point where you need billions upon billions and you need to control government, like, when has it gone far enough? Right. And this is what people don't understand. It's not like people think that, you're hating on the rich. You're hating on that guy that has a couple of extra bucks. You're not hating on the guy that has a couple extra bucks. You're hating on a person that, like the Koch brothers. You're hating on people that have a political movement stronger than the GOP itself, where they're like putting $2 billion into who's going to be the next president.
Yep.
Like that's not regular play money. That's not vacation money. That's like, I'm trying to take over the world money.
That's exactly what that is. And here's the thing. Jason. Let me add this one little layer on this, and feel free to get the last word. It's not just, we always look at this as, oh, you're being immoral. You're trying to steal from the rich. You know what I mean? You're trying to take from the rich. But here's the thing is, like, they are making their wealth on the backs. It would be different if they didn't play this as a zero-sum game, but they absolutely play this as a zero-sum game. The reason they have their billions is because they can squeeze every last goddamn dime out of you and me and have us living hand to mouth. Right. So they talk about the immorality of us taxing the rich or even having this type of conversation. But the reality of it is by us not taxing the rich, they are literally making their billions on the back and the pain and suffering of of billions of people. Because we're not talking about more than a handful of people who have this level of wealth that they can actually control governments. But go ahead, get the last word.
This is going to be a little long-winded. I'm going to try to keep it short, but I'm going to put it one level above you.
Okay,
with the military-industrial complex, right now, at this point, millionaires and billionaires are making sure that small people in every single part of the country are working to make weapons to hurt other people so that they can keep political power, so that they can make sure that they can keep wars going endlessly. We've already been in Iraq for like 16 years, Afghanistan for like God knows how many years. And you listen to our military and they say that, well, it's only the beginning. We're still got things to do. And then you hear people say, hey, I would like to have health care for everybody. I would like to have everybody to have college. Oh my God, you're trying to steal. Like, when has it gone to the point where life is like, taking life is more important than giving us training, giving us skills, giving us health?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone way beyond.
Hey, man, thanks so much for the call. 857-600-0518. I appreciate some good calls tonight. Join in, weigh in on the discussion. I mean, we really have to take a pause and think about this. And I'm not just saying, like, check this out. This is the only thing I'm going to say with regard to everything that's been going on with the civil war on the progressive left. The idea of aligning with some people on the right, however you want to describe them, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and not say they're talking about aligning with racists and white supremacists. Here's the problem with aligning with people on the right. They have a fundamentally different goal economically. If you have to 100% not only are you abandoning the identity of the people who are going to be marginalized by that group over there on the right, but you're even abandoning our class critique, our economic critique, because they 100% absolutely reject this message that we're talking about, because they all think that they're simply displaced millionaires, that one day they're going to be the next billionaire, right? And they feel like the society is fine, that the only thing that's wrong with society is that they just haven't worked hard enough to get their billions. That's their way of thinking. And so this possibility of working together with people on the right, what else are you going to sacrifice, right? You've already clearly sacrificed marginalized groups, Black women, Black people, women of color, people of color, transgender, the LGBTQ community. You already marginalized all those identities. Now you're going to marginalize and sacrifice, rather, your economic critique. Like, why are you a leftist? What makes you a leftist if you abandon everything? Not only are you abandoning marginalized groups, but you're also abandoning your economic critique because in your class analysis, because there's not a single person on the right who's willing to. I mean, you're talking about libertarians who don't even want tax, right? They don't even want income tax. They want to take a snapshot of society right now and allow us to fend for ourselves. And the survival of the fittest, the survival of the economic fittest. Never mind all the historical things that led to exactly where we are. Never mind the millions of people who have been abused in this class structure by the top 1%. Doesn't matter. Let's take a snapshot of where we are, disband everything and cut off federal income taxes, and every man for his economic self. These are the people that you want to align with. So while all last week and the week before, we're talking about how offensive this idea is because of the marginalized groups, but now we're talking about what's our purpose for being a leftist then? If you're going to abandon your economic critique and your expectation of a civilization where people pay into the society the percentage from which they take away. If our economic system creates $1 trillion and you have 25 people who make 80% of that, then they need to pay 80% of what it costs to run the society in which we all live. Hell, you're taking 80% of the wealth that this society creates. You need to be paying 80% of what it takes to run the society that we approve of. You got to keep your workers happy. But they've been able to shirk their responsibility for generations because of the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. Of this, there is no dispute. Of this is the number. If you want to ask me why I oppose neoliberalism, it's because they thought this was a good idea. They were like, maybe we as Democrats can get a little bit of this change. But as much as I oppose the DNC on this very specific issue, I also know that their opposition wants to take this and just do away with federal taxes and say every man for his economic self. You might have been born into a lineage of people that were sandbagged for hundreds of years because of slavery and redlining, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, the pillaging of our communities. You may be from that community, but that doesn't matter because, you know, Jim Bob over there, he's got his $1 million. He's got it made. Maybe you go get a job with Jim Bob and the federal government can't regulate it. That's the type of people that we're talking about on the right. They do not see, they listen to this conversation and they feel like we need to be put in jail. So for the love of God, let's forget about the marginalized communities just for 2.1 seconds, right? We're going to pick it right back up. It's too late. I'm already picking it back up. But we can't forget about the marginalized communities. But if we put the marginalized communities to the side for a second, how are you even a progressive now that you have abandoned your economic critique in order to get some type of anti-war alliance with people who are not anti-war? That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, let's take this caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Yo, what up, Ben? It's Q.
Q, what's going on, my dude? How's it going?
Man, what's going on, bro? Hey, just tuning in real quick. Just wanted to chime in because this is like right up my alley. when we talking about class, you know, me, being a Marxist, you know what I'm saying? This is like one-on-one in education. Just real quick, man.
Do you think?
One of my favorite quotes is from Marx in Das Kapital. He's talking about capitalist production develops technology and the combining together of various processes into a social whole only by sapping the original sources of all wealth, the soil and the laborer. Now, when I discuss this type of stuff with my Pan-Africanist friends, they'll talk to me about how neo-colonialism and capitalism is tied together one-on-one.
Yep. And
you cannot disperse the two because they need each other to survive.
Yeah.
But dude, I can't even tell you right now, man, how many companies we are complicit in our own oppression with, bro. That's what being in the American context of capitalism does to you. Being in the Western context of capitalism does that to you, where you are complicit in your own oppression. I can give you just a couple companies off top that profit off of prison labor and sweatshops.
Yep.
Whole Foods, McDonald's, Walmart, Victoria's Secret, AT&T, BP, Bank of America, Chevron, Chrysler, Costco, John Deere, ExxonMobil, Kmart, McDonald's, Coke Industries, obviously, Microsoft, Motorola, Nintendo, Pepsi, Shell, Starbucks, UPS, Verizon, Walmart, Wendy's. Think about the marginalized communities, and think about the lower income, and think about the poor that use these services every single day. Think about the poor that are a part of these corporations working as laborers every single day.
Yep.
Think about them and the fact that they're making $7.25 an hour and less in my state of Virginia, and they are starving, waiting for them to get an increase in their wages.
Yep.
They're waiting for their labor to be compensated.
Yep.
They're waiting for their health care to be picked up. They're waiting for their children to get some benefits. And the thing is, though, is that we are complicit in this own oppression of ourselves, because the moment in which we point this out, they tell us that we're being divisive.
Yeah.
And they tell us and they tell us that this is something that, we're trying to steal from the rich.
Yeah.
I will make the case that nobody gets to be a billionaire without exploiting the labor of somebody.
Yeah.
Because in the system of capitalism, to mass produce your product, somebody along the way has to be getting fucked.
Yep. For real.
And that's just the facts of what we know. Nike in the 90s, everyone was shocked at that. That still goes on. Which I think just because they had a press conference in Oregon that this is still happening. Adidas, they are still using sweatshop labor in Indonesia, where these women are making 6 cents an hour.
Yeah.
And they get one day. And the most shocking thing about this is they get one day for rest, and that's for when their menstruation cycle happens. And you know how disgusting that system of capitalism is that they literally have to prove to the people who run these shops that they are menstruating by pulling down their pants.
Wow.
That's a fact.
Q, thanks so much for the call, man. I got to cut it there. Those are some amazing points. And here's the deal, folks. Like, we're not talking about. And actually, let me slow down and repeat what the caller said. We are complicit in our own oppression. That's really what it is. I mean, hell, we're not only complicit in our own economic oppression, we're complicit in every other facet. We're complicit with the military-industrial complex. We're complicit with American imperialism. We're complicit with it. And you know, I honestly, like this, it literally was just the article I read this morning, and it just snapped me back. Like, I mean, the fight that we really have on our hands, man, it's such a big fight. We really can't take a day off from this one. We can't take a day off from this one, and we're so far from it. See, there was a time, FDR, a lot of communists don't and socialists aren't fond of FDR, even though he created a society closest in terms of American history, right? He created a society economically closest, and it was so far from being a true egalitarian society, both economically and racially. However, a lot of socialists dislike FDR because he read Marx. And the writing was on the wall. And, you know, you have a crumbling society where the broken and huddled masses are getting ready to flip shit around. And he created a system to coddle the masses in America. Okay, even if you dislike that and you felt like that was a delay to the so-called revolution, we are now living in a world so far from that, where we are, I mean, the idea of a safety net is almost a thing of the past. Our amount of investment in education into infrastructure is laughable compared to the era that followed FDR. You know, we're so far away. We're so far away from even coddling the masses. And the way they are getting away with it is by convincing us that every single one of us, we shouldn't want anyone to pay higher taxes because we're going to be rich one day. How are we going to pay higher? We don't want to put higher taxes on ourselves. And that's how they get around with it. That's how they get away with it for so long. All right. So, and this leads us right into the second half of the conversation, which is about this ongoing fight with this proxy war for Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Man, this fight's still going on. There's two parts of this conversation, and I only have about 13 minutes left. You guys, should I take this caller now? Yeah, let me take this caller now, because otherwise the caller will be on hold for at least 10 minutes. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and our question?
Hi, I just wanted to talk a little bit. I mean, I think we all talk a lot about how we got here and what the problems are. And I think, you know, we can talk endlessly about that. And I think there's a lot of agreement there. But where the disagreement comes, and, you know, that's the hardest thing, is trying to decide
where do we go from here,
figure out how we actually change things. And I feel like it's fractured, and the left has completely fractured at this point. And I mean, there seemed to be a sense of hope, I mean, especially in the primary. And now it seems like the opposite has happened. I mean, it's completely hopeless. And there's so many people talking about so many different issues that are all important, but we're sort of focusing on our differences rather than the things that we can agree on. And I think, you know, you talked earlier about the fact that, you know, every one of these people should be paying their fair share. But I think, you know, until we sort of focus on that one issue, which is campaign finance reform, I mean, while the people, you know, that are directly benefiting from this own our political system and own our government, none of these things are going to happen. Like, none of these things. We're just talking about stuff that's never going to come to fruition. And it's almost like that campaign finance reform is like the prerequisite for everything else. And it's frustrating. Like, I'm not a, you know, professional politician or, somebody that's in politics, even a writer, but I care. And I think a lot of people care. And a lot of us just feel like, we see people that are in that world and, they're in this little endless bubble of all these arguments. And I mean, the purity thing is bullshit, but at the same time, can't we focus on, like that is something that, I'm left, but look at the right, the drain the swamp thing. That was one of the reasons Trump won. So I think those people even are just as frustrated. We don't have to compromise our principles. We don't have to compromise any of our beliefs, but can we say, like, let's just focus on that one issue and get that out of the way first so that it will pave the way for a more fair playing ground so everybody can be heard. And some of those things maybe have a possibility of happening.
Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate your call. Hey, I was going to say the phone number again, but I don't have, I got to talk about some of the stuff. But to answer the question for the caller, no. Sorry, we can't. You know why? No, we can't focus on one thing, and it's not to be an ass, but here's the deal. If everyone were to put all of their energy into everyone who's active with platforms and small followings or large followings, put all of our energy into campaign finance reform, would it happen? No. You know why? Because the people who have to vote on it have no interest in voting on it. The people who are going to vote to make it happen. I know Wolfpack was talking about a constitutional amendment. You know how, excuse my language, but you know how goddamn far we are from a goddamn constitutional amendment from a progressive perspective. We are so far away from that's like saying that's like with Sisyphus forever pushing the same goddamn rock up on the mountain. I'm not talking to you, caller, but it just dawned on me again. I just remember how red the map is for the state level. You have to have 3/4 of the state Congress of the state houses to vote in order to get a constitutional amendment, constitutional convention in order to get a constitutional amendment, or you have to have 75% of the current House of Representatives. We have neither from a progressive perspective. And there's not a serious Republican or serious Democrat, establishment Democrat, that's willing to actually even sign on to that. And the reason I'm so upset about this is because the fact of the matter is that, you know what, or you guys can feel free to organize on that, but you need us educating and stirring up the masses of people who did not vote, who do not vote. And they need to get so upset that all of a sudden 100,000 people in a district of 200,000 people finally show up to come vote when nobody else thought that they were going to vote. And they get those politicians in their grips and put in somebody who's going to fundamentally vote and change that. Without a rising up of the people and the masses, nothing's getting done. Nothing. And shows like mine and shows like everyone else's, it's our own way of stirring up the masses in the specific area in which that group is interested in being stirred up. I didn't make my audience. My audience we found each other. We found each other. People heard what I was saying and they're like, goddamn right, that's what we need to talk about. And now we have people who are mobilized here in a way that they were probably not, or at least they're getting a jump off point. Who was that? Kelly, one of the original members of Progressive Army. She said, like, she treats this like church. She comes and gets her progressive message, and then she goes out and does the work. So yes, it's important for campaign finance reform, but you know how far we got to go? And you know what is more likely to happen before a progressive agenda converts? Look at how many Republican-controlled houses across state houses and state senates. It is going to take a generation or two for us to convert that into something that can, and I'm sorry, we got to do something in my lifetime. We got to do something now in my lifetime. So we need people to, everybody, you know how many people are not even going to understand what we just talked about with campaign finance reform? They're not even going to understand it. But you know what they understand? They ain't got no money at the end of the month. Something ain't right. I'm working 50 hours a week. I've been working 50 hours a week for the last 30 years of my life, and I ain't got no money in my bank. And you mean to tell me that there's somebody out there who doesn't work half as hard as I do, contributing less than what I contribute, but they're billionaires? That's how you wake people up to the truth of their material conditions, and they will join you on the next issue. But we have to first wake them up to the reality of their material conditions. And once they understand the reality of their material conditions, they are woke and they do it for themselves. They will then find their next move. And some of them will go to the anti-war movement. Some of them will go to the Wolfpack campaign finance reform movement. But the first thing we had to do is wake the people up. All right. Anyway, let's talk about one last thing. I got 6 minutes to talk about this. Caller was on the line. I'm sorry, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it around to you. This is why, part of me is super frustrated with, as much as people are, thanks, caller, please call tomorrow. As much as people are frustrated and tired of me going back and forth with the other left, I'm just as tired of seeing this proxy war between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And I'm tired of it from both perspectives. And this is where I was going to tweet about on Saturday and guaranteed I was going to lose 1,000 followers, because it really is not a fun message that I have to convey. And the message is this: hey, folks, hey, progressives, white progressives, I love you, but God damn it, can you not learn how to do this thing? Can you hold up for a second before you get your brilliant epiphany and write your brilliant pieces and then realize, okay, let me just call something. Ryan Cooper, friend of mine on Twitter. Ryan Cooper actually wrote a great article. The article is great. His points are on point. Why millennials don't trust Cory Booker, Deval Patrick, and Kamala Harris. Some good points on that. Some good points. I definitely 100%. I agree most with Cory Booker. I've thrown Cory Booker out to the wolves. There's no salvaging Cory Booker, right? Deval Patrick, I only like him a little bit because in the same state, whatever. I know some people who would work for him, but I don't really like him. And is he even thinking about running? Like, seriously? Deval Patrick's not running for nothing. Kamala Harris, I've got a long list of things that I have issues with her on, but since people are insisting that I give white supremacists a chance, why wouldn't I not give her a chance to repudiate some of her past positions? If she comes to me and says, yeah, I was wrong on the issue X, then I'll be like, okay, I'll evaluate there. I don't care about Cory Booker, so that's a right point. But the point is this: Ryan Cooper wrote a great piece, but Ryan Cooper wrote a piece that is so easily attacked. And I'm like, Ryan, I haven't sent him this message, so, whatever. It's a shame on me for talking about it without talking to him about it first, but it's been a long weekend if you've been following us on Twitter. But I'm like, Ryan, bruh, come on, man. This is child's play. Why would you give people who weaponize identity politics the bullets that they need to shoot at us? I knew as soon as I saw the title and the cover, I said, oh, I know what's going to be on Joyanne Reid in about 2 weeks. White leftists attacking black Democrats. And I'm like, you could have easily have fixed that problem by throwing on there Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, throwing on there, because trust me, there's some issue with Sherrod Brown's background too, right? And it's like, you know what? The answer I get most of the time, I don't want to play identity politics. It's playing your ass. It's beating your ass. I mean, we are forever perpetually in this defensive posture as progressives, where they have mastered the art. Neoliberal center has mastered the art of ignoring people of color, women of color, leftists, and focusing completely. I mean, why are we surprised? We gave you the breakdown of this 18 months ago. I told you this after Netroots Nation. This is Netroots Nation week. 2 years ago. 2 years ago, after Black Lives Matter interrupted Bernie Sanders at Netroot Nation in 2015, I did a video on why Bernie Sanders was probably going to lose, and I outlined exactly this. And 2 years later, we still making the same goddamn mistakes. People, if you cannot look at the lay of the land and say, I may not like the reality of this game, but for me to win this game, I've got to master the game. And what we're doing, we have a lot of people who look at the game and say, oh, they're just weaponizing identity politics. Yes, they are. I don't want to play identity politics. Okay, then you're going to get your ass handed to you. Every single time. And every single time you're going to be on the defense. But Ben, it has nothing to do with the logical argument. Everything he said was so logical. Yes, it was. There was nothing racist about it. No, there wasn't. There was nothing sexist about it. No, it wasn't. So what's the problem? The problem is that you don't understand why putting 3 black people on a cover and saying why we don't trust them coming from a white person is going to trigger a natural response that happens in probably every black person in America. Let me finish. Let me make my case a little more plain. This is thinking putty. I've stolen it from my colleagues, just in case people wondering what this big greenish brown glob. Let me make it plain. When I did the video 2 years ago about Bernie Sanders and why he was going to lose, it was the most negative rated video. It was in response to Cenk Uygur, because Cenk Uygur was trying to lecture Black Lives Matter, and I'm like, nah, Cenk, you're actually wrong on this one. Black Lives Matter wasn't wrong at Netroots Nation. They were wrong in Seattle, but not in Netroot Nation. And if we can't get this now, then we're going to lose. It was my most negative rated video I've ever done. So I said, Self, you need them to hear this message. So why don't you say it in a positive way? Why don't you be mindful of the feelings of all these Bernie Sanders supporters who don't want to watch a video that says why Bernie Sanders is going to lose? And when they see that, the very first thing that happens triggers a natural, visceral response that they reject it. I have the metrics to show that's exactly what happened. And then the very next week, I did the same goddamn message and I put how Bernie Sanders could win. And it's one of my most popular videos to date. Same goddamn message. All I did was change how I packaged it in order to be mindful of the feelings of the thousands and thousands and thousands of Bernie Sanders supporters who did not want to watch a video of why Bernie Sanders was going to lose, but they were more than happy to watch a video of how Bernie Sanders could win, but it was the same goddamn message. I hope you can see the corollary or the correlation or whatever. I'm tired. I'm sleepy. I ain't slept for 2 hours today. I hope you can see. If I could be smart enough to get my message across by just simply changing it and being mindful of the people that I'm talking to and mindful of their sensitivities and not be dismissive of what they feel and what they think, then I can reach them. But if you're going to say, oh, I don't have to play identity politics, then you're going to continue to lose to people who weaponize identity politics. And this is the same gospel that the great Reverend Benjamin Dixon has been preaching since 2015. And in every case, I have been 100% right on this. And this is why progressives are going to lose. Or wait a minute, let me be mindful and say it in a way that people can receive it. And I'm going to say it in a positive way. The best way for progressives to win is to understand the importance of identity to people who hold that identity and be mindful of how we say and communicate and write about them. If that's too much to ask, then progressives are going to have a hard time winning. David, it's on you, man. Let's get out of here.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.